Welcome to Caching Waves. This is an Elliott Wave update for FLR. Now, before I get into where the chart's at now, I just wanted to talk about the last video, and in which case I was looking for this to potentially turn into a larger correction, revisit the 0.618 of the move off the low before attempting another move to the upside. So this was from last video about 8 days ago, and here we are now. It was right up in this area. We're looking for this B and the C. Clearly we followed that path, and as of now I'm going to discuss in a moment what to expect on this micro time frame down at the 15-minute. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the larger term view, which is getting very dicey. I discussed in depth the last video on this, but just wanted to re-show you what I mean in this scenario, and that is the fact that this fourth wave, if you consider a fourth wave complete, I think there's a lot of evidence that it is not. Would have to get moving now to make this 5-wave diagonal up to around 7.736 cents to make a diagonal in a series of 3 waves. It is getting dangerously close to being invalidated, and slowly my bias is changing that we need this move to the downside. In which case, if we do get that, this would all turn into a 3-wave move. We'd be looking for another 3-wave move and attempt to the upside in another 3-wave move rather than 5. So just wanted to make that clear on my larger term view on the 4-hour. If this wave fails, that is how I would change my primary. You can see we're dangerously close to the outer boundary line of this pitchfork. Our time extension tool, we're past the 1-to-1 if we make a new low of this wave 3, which goes against probabilities. So slowly changing this view. And if we do make this move to the downside, we can get extended further out here at the 0.618 or the 1-to-1 in time, and that's of this entire wave 1 through 3 currently labeled, which would get relabeled as an A or a W wave if we make the push over to this area. All right, so going on that, we'll talk about the smaller time frame in a moment. But one thing as well, just to be aware of, this is why I am slowly changing my probabilities to more downside, is the fact that if this is our WXY, right between the 50 and the 618 of this third wave, you can see in time this wave does not quite look correct. It sold off much quicker than the W wave. The only way you can do that and consider it complete is if the W wave is over here, we get an expanded flat for our X, and then it actually looks correct for our WXY. But just based on probabilities just going from the pivots. And in that case, if our W wave was over here, then we hit the 1-to-1 extension in this case. So I just wanted to show you that in the bullish scenario, pretty much we have to pivot from here right in this area to keep this intact. Okay, now in the bearish scenario for the WXY, where the W is here rather than back at this pivot, I'm looking for 3. We get our move down to the 1-to-1 of the W wave here off this X for our Y. That is at 2.314 cents. All right, so we'll go down to the micro time frames, down to the 15-minute. Talk about how this can stay intact for our 5th wave and how we would be likely to fail here for a Y wave. So this is clearly a 3-wave move to the upside. So we'd expect either a 3-wave or a 5-wave and a flat, a 335 or a 333 as an A wave to the upside. So if we got our A wave to the upside, what we would targeting is our 1-to-1 extension of this first wave off the low here, which would take us to about 4 cents. If this makes new lows, obviously we'll have to readjust that based on where they are, but just for purposes of discussion, that's where I would be taking profit if I were to trade this or scalp it, in which case I would look for a sideways consolidation and continuation up in 3s. We're going to get corrective moves if we make that move to the upside. So it's going to make it very difficult to count, but we should just trend up in a series of threes. Now, if we are to fail, I'm still expecting that move to the upside, but I would expect us to stop between the 50 and the 618. Right here, between 3.552 and 3803 of this move to the downside, which would be an A wave in our Y wave. We'll be looking for a 3-wave move here to that zone, and then continuation, an equal length wave of this first wave off that pivot. And that's where, if we zoom out, that takes us to the 1-to-1-ish area. This move around 2.314 cents. And we'll pull those exact pivots once we actually get that pivot area right here. But that's what we would be looking for in this scenario. Okay, so now we have our general idea. You can see there's a lot of confluence in this zone that we're at least going to get a move to the upside, whether we're in the bullish or the bearish case. My suggestion would be, if you choose to trade this, not financial advice, to only target that next move and then wait and see what happens. Do we get a sideways consolidation? So we can look for a long, which would look something like this. And we'd pull our pivots and target the 1-to-1 above of this 3-wave move. So we'd take our profit here, look for a sideways consolidation, look for a re-entry. That's how I would take this myself. Or if we're looking for that move to the downside, how quickly do we sell off here? It's going to be very important. Do we get an impulse to the downside and sideways consolidation like this? Or do we get our move up, sideways consolidation like this? You can see the difference. We're not going to know until we get to that area, but as of right now, there is a decent trade setup here to the upside. Not financial advice, just what I would do. So, can a pivot be in? This is equally as difficult as the previous scenario I told you. We can either have an A wave here, we get our WXY, and then our final wave here where these two legs are matching. In that case, we would pull from our first wave only off our X or B wave, and you can see we hit the 1-to-1 at 3.031 cents. In this scenario, we have a running flat as the corrective move in between. And this would be most likely a diagonal to end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a series of ABCs. You can see these are 3-wave patterns. So is this our ABC complete as a flat, sorry? Or is this a 3-wave A or W? We get a 3-wave, which actually looks more correct to me here. Or do we get another move down like so before we attempt that move between the 50 and the 618 here? So hard to say at this moment. This does look like 3 waves off the low. As you can see, this looks like 3 waves off the low. I'll go down there in a moment. But in that scenario, if our A wave is 3 or our W wave, our 1-to-1 is actually a little bit lower, around 2.933 cents, as you can see. And that would be the measurement from this 3-wave off of here for the 1-to-1, which lines up right to the 618 area of this move off the low. So as you can see, you're not going to know until it happens. I don't know until it happens either. But based on those two scenarios, the important area to hold support is this previous low down here in any sort of trade setup, which is at, according to MEXC, you have to check your own exchange for this, 2.661. And because this is a B wave or an X wave, it can come lower than standard wave 2s. Obviously, you can come down to the 786. So that's your best scenario as of right now, where you'd want to place your stop. Again, not financial advice, just what I would do, but the risk reward isn't the greatest. You'd be targeting the 1-to-1, which is up here, around, if this pivot were to hold, around 4 cents. About a 2-to-1, and obviously if it comes lower, you have to re-pull the pivot, and targets would be a little bit less, but we won't know until it happens. So how can this turn bullish here? If this is a 3-wave, we can get a flat pattern here, and this would end up making 5 waves up. And what that would look like is this would be in the middle of, let's go down to the 5-minute. This would be the middle of a wave 4 in a diagonal, which I don't love. So this would be our wave 1, 3, working on the 4 or complete 4. And we'd be looking for our wedge shape. Look for the pullback and take the long like that, looking for a 3, 4, 5 to the upside. I don't love that. I prefer it more as a corrective move, counter trend, and we need one more move down, hit that 1-to-1. But on the grand scale here, down at the 15 minutes, it doesn't make that huge of a difference unless you're just trying to get as much position size as you can off that last pivot, right? So looking for either a diagonal here to start our trend to the upside, or one more push down and then our move to the upside, in which case I'll pull my pivots and find my target. And trade setup, like I mentioned here, is either wait for the 1-2 in the diagonal. I would suggest waiting for it to complete, in which case you can take a much better entry, probably get closer to a 6 or 7-to-1. And if it fails, take the second one. Or if you're not paying too much attention, you kind of just want to get in now and set it and forget, stop at the low at 2.661 cents. I'm currently targeting for 4 cents, so it's only about a 2-to-1. All depends on your trading style, what you prefer to do. Again, not financial advice, just what I would suggest doing. So as of right now, just for purposes of next video, looking for this to become either a diagonal, move up like so in our 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the 1-to-1, or alternatively, change the color here, or alternatively come down to that 1-to-1. We can even come up one more pivot up, come back to that 1-to-1, and then attempt that move. All right, guys, that's it for Flare. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.